NCRB data is selectively quoted in Parliament. But you can't get to see the whole data set, and you can't know where they... One year, they brought down the suicides by half in 2015. How did they do that? They shifted the corpses to a different column. So, Karnataka, farm suicides fell 62%, and the others column went up 245%. Totally, in the states accounting for 70% of farm suicides, the others column, farm suicides fell by 50%, others column went up by 128%. Who are you kidding? Yourselves. What will you learn from this? What will you gain from this? By the way, again I repeat, the suicides are not the crisis. The farm suicides are the outcome of the crisis, not its origin. They are the consequence, not the cause. The cause lies in the policies we adopted and brought in for 20-25 years, which included changing the entire priorities of the credit system of the banks. If your farmer today has a repayment problem, it's because you shifted out the credit that was going to the farmer to large corporations. How do we know this? NABARD, National Agricultural Bank, blah, blah, blah. Its 2017 potential linked credit plan, 53% of agricultural credit goes to Mumbai city and suburbs. Where are the farmers, where are the agriculturists in Mumbai city? There are no agriculturists in Mumbai, but there is agribusiness. The headquarters of all those major companies are there. And you can also see it in the scheduled commercial banks. The amount of loans below 25,000 rupees have virtually dried up. Who takes loans below 25,000? The poorest, the marginal farmer, the small farmer. Up to 2 lakhs, it's the small and medium farmer. Right? Now, what are the loans that have grown? Between 2000 and 2010, loans of less than 25,000 fell massively from 58% to single digits of the total. Which loans went up 3-fold, 4-fold? Loans above 25 crores. From 1.17% to 17.3%. Now, I don't know how many of you have peasant friends who, you meet on their way to the bank to collect 25 crores. Well, I know a couple. One is called Anil and the other Mukesh. And now they've been joined by a Baba. Right? So I can claim to identify 3 of them. But where are the farmers getting 25 crore plus loans? Second thing, and this is something that you guys need to know, when told about non-repayment and stuff, the credit was taken away, right? So they started going to the sahukar. In the 70s and 80s, the role of the sahukar fell greatly. It starts rising again from the late 80s, early 90s. The third part of that is that the crop loans that farmers take. Now in Maharashtra, a crop loan is given at 7%, and 4% of that is borne by the state government interest subvention. So the farmer is effectively paying 3% on a crop loan. So thousands of farmers who took crop loans, the banks, to cover up where they had lost money, quietly converted the crop loans into term loans, in which you go from paying 3% to paying 14 to 18%. So you owe the bank 1,38,000, and one day you find that you owe them 13 lakhs because they've changed your category of loan from crop loan to term loan. Now, by the way All our finance ministers tell you they doubled and trebled agricultural credit. They're telling you the truth. It did. It just doesn't go to the farmer. It doesn't go to the agriculturist. Today, if the richest man in the country opens a cold storage in Connaught Place, he will get farm loan rate of interest, low rate of interest, because we have redefined what is priority sector farming, priority sector lending. Pranab did that. Chidambaram made it worse. Mr. Jaitley, of course, does it decisively and all. And a whole lot of stuff thrown at you about what is MSP. It's a lot of trash. You really want to know, you can easily find out what they promised and what they gave. That crisis is coming home to roost. And on top of all of this, you bring in demonetization and smash the living daylights out of this. You know that the cattle market, many of you will be doing your, I suspect, taking a shot at the public service exams. One of the first things you learn as an IAS professional is distress sale of cattle is a huge sign of rural distress. When people start selling cattle at 30% below the value, you've got a huge, you know what cattle value is selling at in the major cattle markets across the country? 60 to 80% below the value of the cattle. Imagine if 30% was the benchmark for distress. So you've smashed all these, policies made by a bunch of guys who can't tell one end of the cow from the other. And then you bring GST and slap on 12 to 18% on handlooms. After a lot of fighting, you reduce that. Yeah. You've created a gigantic price crash in farming with the demonetization. Yeah. All over the major markets of, like say, Nashik. Every fourth tomato in India comes from Nashik. And I think every sixth onion or whatever. They were selling at 2 rupees a crate. Less than 50 paise a kilogram for tomatoes. So Adivasis were pulling out their, hey, that's the crisis. What are the things happening? And I'll end with that. Why are we here talking about farmers and farm crisis? I have seen one thing has begun to change from the demoralization of 20 years, which is a major driving thing in suicide. People are beginning to stand up and protest. People are beginning to fight. People are beginning to come out and say, we won't take this. And you've seen that in a spate of farmers' agitations, even very recently, in Rajasthan, in UP, all over the north, in Maharashtra, you've seen this in a spate of such agitations. I began by saying, and I will wind up with that you have a crisis that has gone way beyond the agrarian. It's a crisis of our humaneness, of our humanity. Are we going to sit by and accept no responsibility for policies which many of you and I have benefited from? I certainly, the social and economic background I come from, I have to say I'm a beneficiary of all those policies that I have been bashing for the last 40 minutes. Yeah. Does it mean because we are beneficiaries, we don't have a mind and we don't have a heart? In March, and by the way, the farmers have been reaching out to students. On the 6th of March, 40,000 Adivasi farmers mainly, but also a 5-10% Dalit farmer component and others, marched from Nashik to Mumbai in blazing heat, 182 kilometers They marched the distance in 6 days, and they were supposed to rest on the 6th night and come into Mumbai March 12th daytime. They didn't do it. Instead of marching into Mumbai with their huge numbers, they started with 12,000. In Azad Maidan on the last day there were 50,000. But on 6th night when they arrived in the inner perimeter of Mumbai, what did they do? They said they were exhausted, their feet were bleeding. Most of these are the poorest farmers. They own footwear. Do you know 68, 70-year-old women, grandmothers were marching. You know what they did about the cut and bleeding feet? They sellotaped their feet. Their activists bought 100, 200 rolls, maybe more. I could see that big box, one big box of sellotape. They bandaged their feet with sellotape to cope overhead heat 38 degrees. On the highway, as you put your foot on the tar, you're getting 40 degrees on your heels, on the balls of your foot. Right? And with all this, they decided on the 11th night, we will march tonight and we will march in silence. It was a spectacular thing. 40,000 human beings, silently, noiselessly, without a single slogan, marched into the city of Mumbai and were at the Azad Maidan by 6 a.m. Why did they do that? They did that when they found out that the next morning lakhs of children would be appearing for the board exam, and they didn't want to disrupt the exams of the children. Okay? They did that, and when I asked one of the women farmers, why did you do that when you were so exhausted? She said, our children also write exams, you know. हमारे बच्चे भी लिखते हैं पर exam. Yeah. It won over the city of Mumbai. People whom I have never seen at a demonstration, people from our class backgrounds, came out there to thank them with packets of water, with packets of food. And there was literally a bonding that I last saw 34 years ago in that city and haven't seen since. Yeah. And Yogendra will tell you more, but the All India Kisan Sangharsh Samiti Coordination Committee has given a call, 201 organizations of farmers, unions, associations, labor, have given a call for a march, a giant march on this city, November 28th to November 30th. Right? People will come from all over the country and march. But this has to be a march, not with partisan banners, but with, say, a banner saying, students for farmers, teachers for farmers, lawyers for farmers, doctors for farmers. In the Nashik march, without planning, without an appeal, the doctors of KEM hospital came out and set up in the march, in the Azad Maidan, when they heard about people coming with their feet bleeding. More than a dozen doctors came out from KEM and elsewhere, and from one or two other hospitals to help these people. We need something like that. We need something where you force, as the demand is, force the government of India to hold a special session of parliament. What a democratic demand. The representatives are coming to discipline the representatives. They are saying, discuss our issues also. You know, not just cow slaughter. Discuss our issues. Let there be a 21-day special session of parliament which discusses the Swaminathan report. 3 days. 3 days, the water crisis. 3 days discusses the rights, entitlements, and problems of women farmers, Dalit farmers, Adivasi farmers. That discusses the pending issues of land and land reform and the millions of acres that lie undistributed to poor people. That discuss What kind of agriculture do we want 30 years from now? Corporate-led or community-led? One big difference between the farm sector and all other sectors where the damage has come. Unlike banking, unlike insurance, farming was always a private sector. It's not that they are undoing a public sector. They are smashing a private sector, a broad-based private sector, to put it in the hands of a few corporations. And they say it quite openly to you, we need only 2-3% of the population to run the farming. What the other 97% have to do? They haven't created one job. Think about this. Think about extending your support to that march, to being part of it, to heeding to the call of the All India Kisan Sangharsh Samiti Coordination Committee. Some of us from the middle classes, from professional occupation, professions, are in fact meeting, I came to Delhi for that, to see how we can make ourselves relevant to the march called by the Sangharsh Samiti. How can we make ourselves relevant to the farmers and laborers? I ask you to also undertake that exercise. How do you make yourselves relevant? The changes that are coming are coming. Change is upon us. It's not a question of, do I want change or am I happy with the way things are? The question is whether the changes that happen will happen within our consent or outside it. Are we there as part of it? To make the changes democratic, or do we accept the kind of changes that are being imposed from above on us, which make us ever less democratic, ever more authoritarian, ever less caring about the marginalized? Think about it and act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for your essay words. It indeed was impactful. Now, I would like to invite Professor Yogendra Yadav to throw some light and discuss his opinions about the role of youth.
It's a difficult act to follow after P.Sainath, but I deliberately chose it because I wanted all of you to hear the most authentic voice of rural India, someone who has educated this entire country about things we don't want to hear, things we don't want to confront. So I'm not going to give another parallel speech. We agreed, I requested Sainath to speak at length, and I suggested that my role is limited to summarizing a few points and drawing implications for action. So I'll simply speak about 2 or 3 things, and then we can have a question answer. You can ask him more questions. We can talk a little more. I'll talk about what is this crisis? Why do we have this crisis? What can you and I do about it? Sainath has thrown light on all of these. So my job is easy. When we talk of the agriculture crisis, actually we are talking of 3 crises which have merged into one. First, there is an economic crisis. And the economic crisis is simply this, that agriculture is a loss-making proposition. Go to a village, everyone would tell you, खेती घाटे का धंधा. It's not a remunerative proposition anymore. We can talk about why farmers do farming then. That's a question we should try and answer that. The second is ecological crisis. which is the kind of farming we thought would be successful, the kind of farming which was held out to be a model for this country for future, has reached a dead end. What was considered to be the great boom has turned out to be the great curse. Look at what's happening in Punjab. Once the Kerala crisis is over, do read what environmentalists have to say about what's happening in Kerala and why we are in the kind of crisis that we are. It's an ecological crisis because of water, because of land, over-exploitation of water, over-exploitation of land, use of certain kinds of fertilizers, that we actually end up producing poison. And third, it is an existential crisis. No farmer wants his son, his daughter to take to farming if they can help it. There is a huge exodus of persons from farming, something P.Sainath spoke about. And as a last resort, farmers are committing suicide. These are things which have been talked about. I would just want you to remember these 3 E's: economic crisis, ecological crisis, existential crisis. These 3 things combined into one make for what is called the crisis of Indian agriculture, which, as P.Sainath said, is not just a societal crisis. In many ways, it's a civilizational crisis. Why do we have it? Why are we in this kind of a state? This is not the time nor the occasion to get into detailed analysis of the history of Indian agriculture and what happens there. I'll just summarize it in one word, which is politics, which is power. Underlying these crises is an imbalance of power, which results into a systematic neglect of rural agrarian India, which makes us close our eyes. As P.Sainath rightly said, rural India is not invisible. We are the ones who closed our eyes to it. And this imbalanced power equation has 3 dimensions to it. There is an imbalance of governmental power, which we all consider, which is the visible power. Governments, policymakers, those who take huge decisions affecting millions and millions of farmers day and night. For them, farmers don't matter. Many of them like to claim that they come from farming background. About 300 of Indian members of parliament wish to claim that they are farmers. Well, but they are farmers in the sense in which Mr. Sharad Pawar is a farmer. So for policy makers, for political decision makers, farmers don't exist. There is an imbalance of economic power, which is a much deeper question of political economy, which is the structure of economy itself is loaded against rural agriculture sector. The terms of trade are systematically weighed against rural and agriculture. So what you have is a system